everyone. Welcome into episode 121 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. It is March 13th, 2024, a day of history here in Chattanooga. 31 years ago, we were under the biggest snowstorm in history, a blizzard, 20 inches. Thankfully, today it was 75, so not a blizzard. But it is the middle of March, which means there is so much ongoing in the world of sports here in the United States and down in Brazil. I'm Nick Hill, as always, in Chattanooga, Tennessee, of the USA. And joining me down in Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, is Gustavo Tomazeli. Gus, how are we doing here on this March the 13th?
I'm doing great. It has been a long time. We did the pod on a Wednesday night. So there's some action here in Brazil, especially Libertadores, the South American Champions League. The It's the pre-group stage. When there's like the knockout stage before the group stage in Champions League. So there's the round two of we call the pre-Libertadores. Botafogo and Bragantino. They were in the top of the league last year, fight for title, then fell apart, especially Botafogo, and both of them trying to get in to the group stage of Libertadores. Currently nil-nil, 20 minutes to be played, and only Bragantino attacking and Botafogo defending. So I'll keep
Right.
an eye on that. Brazilian
Right.
Cup, Rio
Yeah.
Branco, and much more.
Yeah. And here in the US, I have multi-view up. Four different conference tournaments. I have DePaul and Villanova in the Big East tournament. Villanova, a bubble team. DePaul only has 3 wins in a year. They would have to win every single game this tournament to make the tournament, which I severely doubt will happen. We have Cincinnati and Kansas in the Big 12 championship. Cincinnati at 12-11 right now. Cincinnati actually favored tonight over Kansas because Kansas has two starters out. We have Missouri and Georgia in Nashville for the SEC tournament. Tonight is opening night. Arkansas beat Vanderbilt in the first game earlier this evening. Missouri has not won a game in SEC play, so they're trying to at least get one win before the end of the season. And then in the ACC tournament in Washington, D.C. this year, unusual location for that tournament, Boston College and Clemson. The Eagles lead the Tigers 27-18, and the Clemson is another one of those bubble teams that cannot afford to lose. If they lose tonight, any chance they have of an NCAA tournament bid is done. So some bubble dreams on the line tonight for sure
And
across the country.
what's crazy it is, Nick, you talk about like something that happened in the past, like you mentioned 31 years ago, the snowstorm. I remember vividly, actually, 4 years ago, I was in Nashville, Tennessee to cover the day two of the SEC championship. And then it was kind of the beginning of the harsh COVID part,
Oh,
the
yeah.
lockdowns and everything. Then when SEC tournament was canceled in Nashville, I was there. It kind of felt real about what was about to come with COVID lockdowns and restrictions. And it's crazy. It's been 4 years already.
Right. And, I guess, just to briefly just to touch on this, 'cause I was thinking about this earlier this week because, March 11th on Monday was 4 years when the NBA was shut down initially. Um, and that kind of, I think, when you look at the legacy of that time period, I mean, this show probably would not exist without the coronavirus
Yeah, that's
because
fair.
of the list of events that occurred. I mean, obviously, the way we had to run the WTK sports show. Of course, you spearheaded those efforts. You brought me along as as your co-sports anchor or co-sports director, and it led to kind of the idea of how fused politics and sports were, and it kind of led to this where we could talk about anything. And there was a lot of bad that happened because of what happened happened started 4 years ago. But you know, you just our lives would be significantly different if that never
Oh,
happened.
yeah, for sure. Definitely that time was challenging and it was hard for everyone, but there were some good ideas that came out of it, some good initiatives, good connections like ours. As you mentioned, we had a really good bond during that time, and we thrive at WTK. I felt we did a pretty good job, and now we have this great podcast that we been doing for like almost 3 years. So that kind of reflects. And but I'll never forget that Thursday afternoon down Thursday morning down in Nashville, and it was really surreal to think about that. But gladly, there were no now there's no problem with
Right.
that, and there's definitely going to happen the SEC tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my
Oh,
question to you, just to kind of wrap up that particular talking point, is: do we feel like sports have returned to that pre-COVID era at this point? Do we feel like we're back? I don't know if, as a culture, we're completely back to where we were pre-COVID, but it feels like in a sports sense we kind of are. But I feel like a lot, like the NIL stuff and transfer portal, does that happen without the coronavirus, at least this fast? I
I
feel like
think
there's certain things that we see now
I
that wouldn't
think
have happened.
I think definitely college athletics, especially college football and basketball, definitely had more effects because of COVID, because there were the 1 year eligibility extra. So probably there were a lot of things that probably a lot of results that wouldn't happen if it were for this extra eligibility. And definitely it boosts NIL and transfer portal. So I think college athletics definitely had more. I more the COVID kind of thing, the COVID kind of policies that NCAA had to implement definitely had more trigger effects than, for example, the NFL or any pro league. Because basically, the pro leagues only kind of shut down spectators. College athletics had to, like, as I mentioned, given 1 year extra eligibility because of the opt outs. And, definitely it changed a lot. And just a quick update: Botafogo appears to have scored, but is getting checked on the VAR. But as of right now, Botafogo has a 1-0 lead. And this makes Bragantino has to score twice to go to penalties.
Yeah, and I'll never forget having to cover games in Neyland, in an empty Neyland, and attending games in a 20,000 seat Neyland. Of course, obviously that team was awful to watch, which just made it worse. I mean, honestly, like probably some of the least fun times in Neyland were during that season, outside of like the Georgia States and the 2017 Georgia. But like the 2020 season, it was just there was a Tennessee football game happening in Neyland, but there really wasn't a Tennessee football game happening in Neyland, which I think is what made the 22 season especially that much more special. And like 21 when we played Ole Miss and had that electric atmosphere at night, like it reminded me of what Neyland Stadium was supposed to look like, and for a whole year we didn't get to see that. So, and now I feel like I appreciate it a lot more.
And in Brazil it was interesting because it took a while for fans to come back to the stadium. It was only at the end of the 2022 seasons that fans were kind of allowed back in. Only 2023 there were like full stadiums back. So for me it was, a little bit of adjusting, because I got used to being covering games with empty stadiums, but then fans came back and all the great atmosphere come back. So definitely, now as to answer your question, I feel like in terms of environment, definitely, at least here in Brazil, soccer has come back to like the pre-COVID era.
Oh, for sure, and I agree with that to a certain extent. But there'll always be some things that change. But what doesn't change, thankfully, unlike 4 years ago, is it's March, and March means it's March Madness time, and we have a week officially until the madness hits us right in the face. But this means we are now at the end of the regular season, and we got to start off with our basketballs, who had a pretty great ending to the season. They were able to beat South Carolina last Wednesday, a week ago, to win the SEC regular season championship. However, on Saturday, they did lose in a close battle to Kentucky, despite Don Connect dropping 40 points. You know, I mean, obviously, it sucked to lose on Saturday, especially to a big rival in Kentucky. But overall, they accomplished the goal. I mean, when we were looking at this schedule 2 weeks ago, like, okay, can you go 3-1 at least to win the SEC? And that's exactly what they did. And mission accomplished, in my opinion. And for the regular season, I got to give it an A.
I mean, you have to give it an A because your goal in the regular season is to win your conference regular season, championship, and they did that. And of course, the last game of the regular season was at home against a big rival, so you want to make a statement and win and show like, hey, that's why we're champions. But at the same time, like it was a hard run. We Tennessee had to go to Alabama to go to South Carolina and got those wins. So when unconsciously, like players, take a little bit of the foot out of the gas when you accomplish what you're supposed to, which was the SEC regular season championship, and also to kind of look ahead because you don't want to lose any starts in the SEC tournament because you want to get the double. You want to win the regular season and the championship tournament. And and I'm wondering, so Nick, so if for example Tennessee wins the SEC championship, what would happen to the tournament spots that the conference championship gets? Because Tennessee, I would imagine, if even if they were eliminated tomorrow, they are still in.
Well, I mean, Tennessee would be in, obviously. I mean, they would be in as either a one or a two seed. Now, when it comes to the conference tournaments, and I put this question on there, and I really want to get to this point. How much do the conference tournaments really matter? And you know, and it varies between major and minor conferences. Like Kansas is playing tonight. Kansas is in the tournament no matter what. They'll be probably around a 3 to 4 seed no matter what they do this week. But though, for a team like the Chattanooga Monarchs, this past weekend in Asheville was everything for them because that determined their entire season whether or not they got to make the NCAA tournament. So there's multiple sets of standards for how important a conference tournament is. And thankfully for Tennessee, we are pretty much already in. The only thing that we can really fight for this week is, well, another SEC tournament championship and perhaps that final one seed. Um, for Tennessee, my number one thing I want this week is no injuries. That's my number one thing. If we lose in this tournament, fine, but I don't want any injuries because the
So the
tournament I care about is next week.
So the question is, for example, if like, and you brought up to this point, so Tennessee decides to hey, for example, Dalton Connect, is very fatigued. Would you rest him on the SEC tournament to kind of preserve him for March Madness?
Yes, like if I felt like playing him could put him in any sort of jeopardy for March Madness, you rest him.
That's fair because the tournaments, the conference tournaments, as you mentioned, the teams that care about the most are the ones who are still out of the dance, who are definitely do not have a spot. Like, for example, Tennessee has a spot, Kansas has a spot, Arizona has a spot, but a lot of teams don't. Like, for example, Kentucky really needs to win to get in.
Oh no, Kentucky is in. Kentucky's a Tiger top four seed. We're thinking about like a team like a Texas A&M, for example, that's on the bubble. Texas A&M needs to go on a run this week and probably win the tournament to secure a spot. Or I'm watching Missouri and Georgia right now. They have to go on a magical Cinderella run, which I doubt either team can do. But in theory, they have a chance. Like right now, Boston College is at 35-22 on Clemson. That would be a pretty big upset. And for Boston College, winning the ACC tournament is the only way they are going to go to the NCAA tournament. So yeah, for a team like Boston College, like Georgia, Missouri, there's no such thing as resting players. This is your tournament. You are going all the way in. And on occasion, these Cinderellas do make the tournament. Like I remember Georgetown, they were awful back in I think like 2021. But you remember they won that run in the Big East tournament. They won the Big East tournament and they got in as a 12 seed. Or like in 2008 when the tornado hit Atlanta during the SEC tournament. Georgia was awful. They had a sub 500 record, but they found a way to win the SEC tournament and they got in as a 13 seed. So for those teams, yes, this tournament 100% matters and you have to go all the way in. But for like Tennessee, there's no reason to, because we're talking razor thin margins. between us, North Carolina, and Arizona. And at the end of the day, we don't know what the selection committee is ultimately going to value. And when they stop counting games, because as we saw 2 years ago, Tennessee should have been bumped up to a 2 seed when they won the SEC tournament in 2021, but we didn't get that. We got a 3 seed, and
I,
it's
I
kind of
think it was
started this.
wasn't 2022. I think 2021 we lost to Bama.
Oh yeah, wait, this is 2024. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was still 23. So 2022, yeah, when we won in Tampa over Texas A&M. We didn't get a seed bump at all. And there's a theory kind of that the selection committee sets their brackets on Saturday night and does not really care what happens Sunday outside of IMAC qualifiers. And basically, they'll have like a couple of set brackets. So, like if Texas A&M had beat Tennessee, Texas A&M would have had to be in the tournament somehow. So, like they would have put us in that tournament or put them in that tournament, which they didn't win, so they were left out altogether. And remember, which was a huge controversy at the time. So really, to me, I think if the Vols win on Friday, and then Saturday we will probably play Auburn because the winner of Tennessee and they'll play either, I believe it's Texas A&M or Mississippi State, if I'm not mistaken. They'll play probably Auburn on Saturday. And if you lose to Auburn on neutral court, that's not going to hurt your metrics at all because Auburn is also a top 10 team in every single category. So, to me, I think if you win Friday at least, I think you're very much have a very, very strong argument for the 1 seed, unless UNC wins the ACC tournament, which in that case, I'm afraid that blue blood bias and plus their head-to-head win may give them the 1 seed. But, as we kind of talked about before, does Tennessee really want the 1 seed in the West, or do we want the 2 in the South? I can't hear you guys.
Especially for you have like a home crowd.
Yeah, because if we were the 1 seed in the West, we would have to go all the way to Los Angeles for the Sweet 16 and Elite 8, and probably have Arizona as our 2 seed, which means Arizona fans would have a much easier time getting there to Tennessee.
Yeah, that's a tricky question.
Because
what?
I want the 1 seed because it's technically an easier path.
Yeah,
but
let me ask. But for example, if Tennessee makes the final against Ole Miss, and then Tennessee beats Ole Miss, does Ole Miss get the spot of the SEC tournament because Tennessee's in?
No. You have to win your tournament. So, if the conference, the automatic bid only goes to the tournament champion. So, Tennessee doesn't have an auto bid right now.
Oh, but if Tennessee wins the tournament, then it opened up for somebody good ranking.
Well, Tennessee would just get that auto bid, which means basically what that would do in essence, it opens up the door for one more bubble team.
Oh, yeah, that's what I want to know. Okay, that's what I want
to know. So, if Missouri or Georgia won it, then you're stealing a bid from, Villanova.
Oh,
so,
okay.
if you're a bubble team, you don't want other bubble teams to win their conference tournaments. Because that could knock you out. So, I'm going to pull up bracketology.
Okay.
Right now. So, we can kind of think about this in the kind of the applicable.
So, while you open bracketology, just a quick update. Bragantino scored a beautiful goal. Talisson, really beautiful goal at the 88 minutes. So, really, really dramatic end game in Bragança Paulista. 1-1. Botafogo is getting is advancing to the group stage of Libertadores, but I'll keep an update on that.
Okay, so if we play Mississippi State on Saturday or Friday, which I believe there'd be a very good chance of us playing. I'm just going to look up SEC tournament bracket here on the side.
I have. I can put it too.
Yeah.
I have it too. See, there it is. Oh, it shows up mine. Let me see if we can.
Yeah.
Oh,
You just have to toggle back and forth. So we're going to
Yeah.
play either Mississippi State or LSU on Friday. Now, for Mississippi State, they're right now in the last 4 byes of the Ludinardi section. So they have to go all in because they're on that bubble. And a win over Tennessee would secure their spot. In all likelihood, that's another extremely quality win. Like Indiana State, for example. That was a team where they had a chance to automatically lock themselves in with win over Drake on Sunday in the Missouri Valley Conference Championship, but they lost to Drake. So Drake took their spot, not the rapper, but the school in Iowa. And Indiana State now is on the bubble. There's really nothing they can do about it. Their tournament's already done. So like St. John's, they play in the Big East, so they're going to be fighting for their lives. And all these other teams like Colorado and Virginia, of course, Texas A&M. If you toggle back, what does their bracket look like for Texas A&M? Because they should play tomorrow. They play Ole Miss. So that's basically an elimination game. Whoever loses that game is completely out. And then Texas A&M or Ole Miss would have to beat Kentucky on Friday to get a real shot at potentially a bid. So that's in terms of the bubble. You really need to watch the Ole Miss Texas A&M game and what they do against Kentucky, and then Mississippi State. If they beat LSU, can they upset Tennessee on Friday and save their season effectively? But really, honestly, for A&M, for Mississippi State, for Ole Miss, winning the SEC would matter the most to those teams, just because they need to win the tournament. And obviously any team playing tonight needs to win the tournament to get in. But Auburn, Kentucky, Alabama, South Carolina, and Florida, those teams are all in, no matter what.
Yeah, and currently Georgia has a 8-point lead over Missouri with 1 minute and 27 seconds left in the first half.
I'm a little ahead of you now. Missouri's cut that back down to 4. Tight one there. Also, Cincinnati up 32-19 over Kansas. But remember, Kansas is down multiple starters tonight. So effectively, if injuries, Bill Self effectively just might be kind of tanking this one and saving his team for the NCAA tournament.
And Vanderbilt is, I guess, the first eliminated team in the SEC for the March Madness. They lost to Arkansas 90-85.
Yeah, and I think that'll be it for Jerry Stackhouse as a Vanderbilt Commodore. He has very, very nice suits, dresses well. And honestly, he's a good X's and O's coach, but they just don't have the talent at Vanderbilt. He's not getting the talent there. They need to go find someone who can get them the talent because it's just not working at Vanderbilt. And, of course, we have more firings to talk about later that may interest some people in our audience. So, just to give us an idea of what the path would look like for the Volunteers. So Tennessee right now would be a 1 in Charlotte. We'd get either Stetson, who won their league, so Stetson and Wagner both. I believe Wagner's in the Northeastern Conference. Stetson is in the Atlantic Sun, the A Sun. Tennessee would be big favorites over both. However, do want to caution, Purdue was in the same boat as the 1 seed, coming off with a 16th seed play-in winner in Farley Dickinson last year. That didn't work out for them. So obviously, you got to take every game with utmost seriousness in the tournament. Now, Rick Barnes has not really traditionally had issues in the first round. It's been the second and the third rounds that we've seen problems. So what would that look like in our bracket here? So Dayton or Oklahoma? Now, Dayton is a team that's very interesting to me because this is their best team since the COVID year. Because remember, they would have been a 1 seed in 2020 with Obi Toppin. They had a magical season that year, but that got robbed from them. So, this is probably their best shot to be on the big stage since then. That's going to be a very motivated school to be in the tournament because I know to this day those fans feel like they got robbed of a golden chance.
Dayton and San Diego State.
Yeah. Now, San Diego State has since gone to the national championship, so they've kind of made up for it. Dayton, no, hasn't, so that kind of worries me a little bit. Oklahoma has been an up and down team in the Big 12. Now, Tennessee, I think, can and would beat both of those teams, but it wouldn't be easy, right? We would get either team's best shot, and it's the tournament. Now, you get past there, all four of those teams. And shout out to Jason Warwick, our good friend from Indiana. Put in Indiana State, you cowards. I totally agree. Indiana State deserves to be in. Right now, they are the last team in. And obviously, it's been a great day for him basketball-wise. We'll talk more about how Louisville has finally been freed from basketball hell today. But a potential Sweet 16 here, if this were to be the bracket, BYU is very dangerous. They're in KenPom all year. They've been a top 15, top 20 team. I watched them play Kansas a few weeks ago, and they beat them in Lawrence. That's a very well-rounded team. That's a team that, if they got hot, could 100% beat Tennessee. South Florida as well. South Florida has been a very, very good team. They had, I believe, like a 14-game winning streak at one point. Just a meteoric rise out of nowhere. Probably the best team in school history. Illinois is a team that actually I went to this game. Illinois versus Tennessee back in December. Very highly competitive game. I would imagine that both of those teams, if we were to meet again, this would be another highly competitive matchup. And McNeese State, the 13th seed, this is Will Wade's team. And Will Wade has taken them from 3 wins last year and has completely reversed the team this year. McNeese State has only lost 3 games this entire season. Very dangerous team. So a Sweet 16 here, this feels like a classic Rick Barnes trap for any one of those teams. You know, and then you look on the other side, we're looking at a team like Baylor maybe, as a team that just won the Final Four 2 years ago. It's a team that's a program with championship experience. Arizona as well has a lot to prove here, because remember last year they were upset by Princeton in the first round. And there are questions about, Tommy Lloyd, is he just a good regular season coach, maybe not a good postseason coach? And plus, there's a lot of questions too about their conference. The Pac-12 sucks this year. It's them and Washington State in the tournament, and that's it. So unless someone else makes the tournament, which Colorado might make it 3. But, just kind of what would be your thoughts on that bracket, Gus?
Tennessee definitely has some traps. I definitely don't want to play Oklahoma. Oklahoma's the kind of team that, although in basketball they're not as good as in football, but that's when you can get a little, kind of trapped. That's where kind of the name comes strong. But otherwise, I feel like South Florida had a really good season. I watched some of the games when I was down in Florida, and they are a team to watch out, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, this will not exactly what your brackets look like. It's just one potential bracket that we could see this season. Another team there to watch out to. That's shout out to Aaron Young. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar must be in the tournament. He's referring to, I'm not exactly sure which Indiana State player he is referring to, but I know it's an Indiana State player he is referring to. And it'd be cool to see Indiana State in the tournament right now. According to Ludonard, he has them as the very last team in. They really need to root against Texas A&M, Wake Forest. Villanova right now is only up by 3 points over DePaul. Actually, DePaul now has been a 1-point game. If Villanova loses to DePaul, that should be like an automatic elimination for Villanova, because DePaul has 3 wins this year, period, and is winless in the Big East. They cannot lose to DePaul and make the tournament. Jason Warwick says it's the big goofy white guy. That does not help me. The big goofy white guy from Indiana. Also, you are free of Kenny Payne's terrorism, and that's right. Let's go right into it, since he brought up here. Louisville finally has fired Kenny Payne. It feels like we've been talking about it for a while. He finishes 12-52 as Louisville's head coach in 2 seasons. I didn't think it was possible to be that bad. It's really impossible to be that bad at any school, let alone at Louisville. I mean, Louisville is a school of a proud basketball tradition, has won multiple national championships, consistently has been a top 10 program in basketball. And when that program is rolling, I mean, that city is behind that team. I mean, that arena is rocking. I know, Jason, you ran the student section for a while, and you guys are crazy up there. I mean, y'all love basketball. And it was really sad to see the KFC Yum Center this year be dead because of how bad Kenny Payne did as a head coach. And I want to play a soundbite from Kenny Payne from last night because Jason, welcome onto the show.
I figure if you're going to talk about the ending of the terrorism run in Louisville, I might as well be on here to give my 2 cents real quick and crash the podcast. But please play the clip, because if it's the one I'm thinking of, it's pretty bad.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm pulling it up now and obviously you are much more of an expert on Louisville basketball than me. I feel like I've learned a lot about it just through you and just from observations over the years I've made from the outside.
Hey, Kenny, Tyler Grieber from.
So this is this was after last night. They lost to, I think it was NC State, right? 94-85 to end the season mercifully for Louisville. And Kenny and this reporter, we'll just I think this clip has a question. We'll just play it.
Hey, Kenny, Tyler Grieber from WDRP. When you factor in the results, the attendance, all of these things, how do you make a case to be brought back for year 3?
For me, I go back to day one. And it's unfortunate that we're talking about this right now. When I walked into the program as the new head coach, I talked about I needed everybody on the same page. We sort of forgot that. I talked about how I'm not going to let you blame me. I'm not standing up here by myself. I need all of Louisville with me. We sort of forgot that. I talked about it's going to take time, and I'm going to watch and see who jumped on and off the Titanic. We sort of forgot that. I gave a specific time. I said 3 or 4 years, and I'm good with it. That's what I believed at that time, and that's what I still believe it takes to fix this program. And like I said, with guys like this, you have a foundation. Brandon Hatfield, Mike James, JJ Traynor, the young guys that we have a foundation. Whether I'm the coach or not, I can look in the mirror and say I gave it everything I had to help this program. I love Louisville. I played here. I won a national championship here. This is not a job for me. Contrary to those who criticize, I don't sleep at night thinking about my brothers, the former players that played here, who had no access to the program. Should not be talking about this right now, but I have to say this. These young men, to play in a program where there's so much scrutiny, is unfair to them. They deserve to play in a program where people are uplifting them to be better, not fighting and tearing them down to make them question how good they are. Then you make my job impossible.
It was the fans' fault, Jason, why he lost to Chattanooga, to Appalachian State, to Gardner-Webb.
Lenore Ryan
let Big Blue take over the KFC Yum Center.
The craziest stat here, Nick and Gus, Kenny Payne has more Division II losses than road victories in his tenure at Louisville, which ended 12-52. 12-52. And this man is trying to say, oh, well, I told you it was going to take 3 to 4 years. It's the fans' fault. I wasn't supported. Bullshit. You are full of crap. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Get the hell out of my program.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of like Jeremy Pruitt. Because remember Pruitt, he came in first spring game 2018. And like remember he said not enough people showed up for a spring game. Why did like only 50,000 people show up for a spring game? It was like first and foremost, that's a lot of people to show up for a practice football game. And it really is just a practice. And like two, we know you're playing at Alabama. You should be trying to enamor yourself to us. And this is very similar here with Kenny Payne. and there was a telling quote, and I know, Jason, you had something else that you wanted us to play here as well. I'm going to pull up. So I
This
guess
is
this is from
This is from Louisville's athletic director, Josh Hurd, in his press conference today, referencing what Kenny Payne said last night about not being supported. Just listen to this and have a laugh.
This basketball program is the lifeblood of this athletic department, this university, and this city. And so to say that it's not going to be given the resources needed to be successful would be incorrect.
Ouch.
wow.
He's
And I
sick
saw
of
that-
Kenny Payne's crap, and so is everybody else.
There was a quote I saw from Brandon Huntley Hatfield that I thought was insane. I forgot where I saw it because I might have gone on to. I think it went on to. Let's see here. Journaling team.
All I know is Kenny Payne.
Wow.
You are the weakest link. Goodbye.
Yeah, because basically what BHH, of course, he formerly a former Vol, ended up at Louisville. Basically, what he said was the team lacked an identity, and that they felt like they had no direction. But he said the players tried their hardest, but they just felt like they never had an identity. They never were given any direction, which
I
is
believe that
basic-
because this team is at least 10 or 12 wins better. This is a 20-win team by talent. It's just Kenny Payne can't coach. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think whoever's going to come in will instantly be far better. And I expect Louisville to at least be on the bubble next year, if not better, and back into NCAA tournament contention. I mean, there are 5 stars on that roster. BHS one of them. I mean, there's zero reason. I mean, the only game I watched in full of Louisville this year was Chattanooga Louisville. Obviously, I'm Mocs are my second team, so I wanted to see how the Mocs looked. So I watched that game, and it was stunning how much Louisville looked like a SoCon team that night. And they didn't look like an ACC program. They didn't look like an elite blue blood, because obviously we've also been watching a lot of basketballs this year, right? And like Tennessee in the past looked like what Louisville looked this year, and Louisville's supposed to look like what Tennessee's looked like this year, right? Like it's opposite day this season.
I think Josh Hurd, the athletic director of Louisville, knows he has to get this hire correct. The thing with Kenny Payne, and the thing that all the Kentucky fans are going to say, and everybody says, oh, well, you were excited to hire him because everybody wanted it to work. He seemingly checked all the boxes. He's a champion alumni. He is known as a great recruiter. He's been an assistant coach at both Kentucky and in the NBA with the New York Knicks. He knows his X's and O's. He's known as a big man developer. That's great. All of those things are great. But the one uncertain was, can he handle being in charge? And that answer is no longer uncertain, and it's an emphatic no. And that's okay. Just because you're not cut out to be a head coach doesn't mean that you're a bad coach. But to go and start making this personal with the fans is ridiculous. It's quite asinine, in my view, for somebody to feel personally attacked when the fans just held him to the standard that he was a part of. And I think it's disheartening that he chose to blame everybody but himself. Newsflash, you're the guy with the 12-52 record. Your program has been a disaster. And I don't want to hear this crap that he inherited a broken program. Nonsense. Chris Mack had this team number 1 in the country about this time 4 years ago. Right before COVID hit, Chris Mack had Louisville number 1 in the country. There's no more NCAA violations looming over. The team was number 1 in the country. This nonsense that Louisville is a broken program is just stupid, and it's wrong.
He was just trying to cover his ass. He was just trying.
100%.
No,
It's
like
because
that-
he's not a good coach.
That press conference, the entire press conference was literally he saying, hey, you guys can fire me, but I'm going to defend my legacy or whatever job I did here. And he was trying to put the blame on everybody else.
And what he did in that time was he burned the bridges and all of the goodwill that he may have had left with the fans. And that's sad. But it is what it is. He took something and made it personal when it wasn't personal. You know, if he, you know, I like to think, okay, maybe he was just hired at the wrong time. Maybe he is somebody that needed to be a head coach somewhere else, and maybe 10 years down the road he is a good coach. And that may be, but he's not going to be welcome back now because of the nonsense he's doing right now. And I find that sad. I find that disheartening, but it is what it is. It's just the it's just the outcome of his own actions.
Yeah, and it's just crazy. Like it's like I'm trying to think of like a former basketball player. It's like if Chris Lofton came back, was our head coach, and was just awful, and then said everyone in Knoxville sucks. I'm leaving. Yeah, it's unbelievable. But thankfully, it's over, and now you guys get to turn the page. And as a Louisville alum, as someone who has deep ties to this program, I guess give me two different trains of thoughts here on the next coach. One, kind of your wish list, your dream. And I know Aaron Young in the comments is saying that he does not want you to come after Indiana State coach Josh Shirts. He wants you to leave Shirts alone. But give me like your dream candidates and who you think is probably more realistic. Because Louisville's clearly got to go bigger. No, you can't go for an assistant again this time.
Oh, no, you have to go big or go home. And wish list wise, I mean, I think you have to make the calls to Jay Wright, Scott Drew, Brad Stevens. Those guys, you have to make them tell you no before anybody else. Now, with that said, I think the only one of those that's actually realistic is probably Scott Drew. I think he is my top realistic wish. And with that said, I'm not even sure we get him. He's got a good thing going at Baylor. Realistically, Jerome Tang, a former Baylor assistant, he's at Kansas State. I think he's a good shout. Mick Cronin at UCLA is a name that people keep throwing out. I'm a little hesitant on him. I think he is too inconsistent. Same thing with Eric Musselman at Arkansas. I think he's a little too inconsistent for my liking. Dusty May, he's a mid-major coach, but I think he would be okay. But I think Scott Drew and Jerome Tang have to be 1 and 2 in terms of your realistic options. And I'll tell you what, though, Josh Hurd, if anybody could pull Jay Wright out of retirement, it's Josh Hurd, who worked with him at Villanova. So I'll tell you what, if we can pull Jay Wright, I'd run down the street in my underwear celebrating.
Yeah, Villanova's about to bring him back from retirement because they're losing down to DePaul in the second half.
Oh, geez.
Potentially ruining their entire season. But
another name, Billy Donovan from the Chicago Bulls. I think he is somebody that we could pull also, realistically.
Absolutely. I mean, I grew up hating him since he was at Florida, but I mean, he's a fantastic coach.
Shout out to my friend Miguel Ribeiro saying good night to me and to my American friends. And another name to throw out there, Rick Pitino. Come back?
Look, I would have Rick Pitino back yesterday. I would have Chris Mack back yesterday. The problem is neither one of them are ever coming back because of the transgressions of the interim board and the interim people that fired them. What's crazy, guys, is when I was at Louisville, we had 5 different school presidents in my 4 years. And it started with the first president got arrested for embezzling money. And then there were a couple of interims. And during the interim thing, former Governor Matt Bevin fired the entire school board and put his own people in there, which was the basis of a lawsuit. And those interim people were who fired Tom Jurich, the old AD, and Rick Pitino. And then that board was deemed to be have no legal basis. And so the school got to bring their own people back, but the damage was already done. And then on the way out, the school president that was there when I left, her name was Neely Bindaputi. She's now at Penn State, but she fired Chris Mack and athletic director Vince Tyre about a week before she dipped for Penn State because she didn't like him. And then the damage was done. when you guys think about what kind of shambles Louisville is in, this is what we're dealing with. And people say, oh, Louisville's a broken program, but Louisville is one good coach away from being great again. You can rebuild a program in one offseason in the portal. This roster already has a ton of talent. Sky Clark, former 5-star. Brandon Huntley Hatfield, former 5-star. JJ Traynor, 4-star. You've got all these guys who are supremely talented, and they were made look stupid this year by an incompetent coach who blamed everybody but himself.
Yeah, and didn't Matt Bevin, like, he was the incumbent and lost to Andy Bashir, if I remember correctly.
That's correct. He's the
Right.
guy who waged war on all the teachers, and then the teachers voted him out.
Wow.
Matt Bevin single-handedly destroyed the University of Louisville athletic department, and then he also got the school de-accredited by the accreditation union. So for about 6 months, Louisville's degree was not backed by any accreditation company or union or whatever they're called, which was just incredible. The incompetence level was amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds like Tennessee for a while. I mean, I remember back in a decade ago how dysfunctional we were going from, like, Beverly Davenport to, we had Jimmy Cheek before, and we had.
But did the accreditation of your school ever get pulled?
No.
That's a level that I didn't think we could find.
Right. But thankfully, hopefully, all of that's past the University of Louisville. I know two other names I've seen online, at least. One I've seen brought up is Bruce Pearl. Yeah.
It's not going to happen. He and Chris Beard both, not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Another name, too, I saw outside of that, I brought him up earlier as for a potential option, as a potentially, upset Cinderella bid in the NCAA tournament. Will Wade. He's had a great season at McNeese.
I would
honestly,
easily.
And honestly, I think the school that honestly makes the most sense for him, I know Louisville probably won't touch him with the NCAA pass, DePaul.
I mean, DePaul's got nothing to lose. So I think, though, while Louisville probably won't touch him, I think it's more important for Louisville to win than it is to be squeaky clean with the NCAA. And hear me out here. The NCAA is losing its authority, and the NCAA is not as powerful as it once was. The University of Louisville Athletic Department continues to lose money on buyouts and empty seats. At this point, it's win at all costs for Louisville. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see a guy like Will Wade get a shot because his stuff was NCAA related only. I think top of the wish list, though, Kelvin Sampson. I think Kelvin Sampson is a guy that Louisville could potentially pull. And I think he's got massive experience both at Indiana and then at Houston. Got the Houston Cougars #1 in the country for like the 5th straight year. He's a name that I haven't seen a whole lot of people talk about, but I think he'd be an excellent fit at Louisville because you don't want to go for a young guy that's unproven. I like Jerome Tang, but that worries me. I like Dusty May, but that worries me. Will Wade has the NCAA pass. Kelvin Sampson does too, but Kelvin Sampson's also got them #1 in the country for the last 5 years. So if you're going to go with an NCAA pass, you got to go all in and go Kelvin Sampson. IU is still paying for firing him in the mid-2000s. That's how far back their program was set, by firing Kelvin Sampson.
Yeah, and speaking of them, and you know more about Indiana as well, I'm shocked they're not moving on from Mike Woodson this offseason. I know a lot of their fans are furious that they're not.
I think unreasonable fans are furious. I think reasonable fans have a little bit more patience. The thing with Mike Woodson is he's a good coach, and his record shows he's a good coach. This was a down year, but at this point, it's up to him to prove that his first 2 seasons at IU weren't a fluke. You can turn over the program in one offseason in the portal, go get a team, fill out your roster with guys that want to be there, that fit your identity, and go and win. I think this is the prove-it year for him, though. He's going to get one more year, and if he has another down year, he's going to get fired. But he's had enough success in his first 2 seasons to buy him this year, and frankly, I think that's fine. I'm not an IU fan, but I know a lot of people that went to IU. A lot of my friends are IU fans, and a lot of them are upset, but I don't understand why. Mike Woodson is a good coach, and he had a great couple of years at IU to begin. And this team, like I said, yeah, it was down, but it's not due to Mike Woodson. And even then, they still have a pretty decent record. It's not like they went 12-52 over the last 2 seasons.
Right. And the Big Ten is it's a tough conference, especially
Yeah, of
after
course.
losing against Jackson Davis last year. I mean, it's just they're bound to have a little bit of a rebuild. So,
yeah, it's just IU fans are being impatient, and I mean, I get it. I'm a Louisville fan. I understand.
Absolutely. And, I kind of just want to bring it back full circle here to Tennessee, because I was going to bring this up earlier, but we're going to talk about some of the player awards that the Vols got this year. Of course, Dalton Connect, SEC Player of the Year. And I've seen some mock drafts where he's as high as number 4. Now, I don't think he's going to go that high. Most are around 10 to 20. But, at this point, would we say that this is probably the single greatest regular season for a Vol? In the pantheon of Tennessee basketball history, because I think it's comparable to what Bernie and Ernie did. It's comparable to Allen Houston, comparable to Chris Lofton. I would say it's above Grant Williams for sure, because obviously I only saw Lofton and Grant play. But, I mean, for my money, Connect is the single greatest Vol, at least for the regular season. And if he can produce some magic the next couple of weeks and take our program places we've never been, he could be the all-time greatest.
I don't disagree. Dalton Connect has all the tools in the world to go ahead and cement his legacy in 1 year. And do I think that the Vols will make the Final Four? No, I don't think so.
Do I think there's a chance? Absolutely. And I think Dalton Connect was I think his player award for SEC Player of the Year was very well deserved. I think he has put on one of the best regular seasons of any player that I've ever seen. Well, now it's time to put some hardware at the end of that, go win in the SEC Championship, go win a couple of games in the NCAA tournament, then let's turn around and talk again. But I would agree. I think, if he can take the Vols to the third weekend, I think he might have had the best season of any Tennessee basketball player ever.
Yeah, and it'd be like Kawhi with the Raptors back in 19. Only one season, but he's the greatest Raptor, because of what he was able to do for that franchise. And it's not just him that got awards. I want to shout out Sakai Ziegler, of course, ended his season on a horrible injury last year, but came back and got better as the year got along, as he got back 20%, one defensive player of the year.
Oh, it's been excellent. And it couldn't have happened to a better kid, too. If anybody doesn't know his story, go and look at his story. Great kid, upstanding human being, and an outstanding basketball player.
Absolutely. And he's rolling in those ad endorsements. Saw he doing them now with like Freddy's, and I think it did one with like a badge company. So good things come to good people if they just stay into it. And it's just amazing to see how he's flourished, how Don Connect's flourished, and also Jonas Idu. He was a second team all SEC as well. And we're going to need all 3 of those guys if we're going to go deep. And obviously the rest of the team as well. I think Josiah Jordan-James and Santiago Vescu will tell you they didn't have the senior day they wanted against Kentucky, but it isn't over after senior day. Like, if they can go and make plays throughout these tournaments, they'll be able to cement their legacies. And obviously Gainey coming off the bench, he has a huge role as a 6th man. Tobe Awaka has a huge role in this. I think Rick Barnes probably deep down knows this is probably his last shot at a Final Four, last realistic shot. And like Jason said, I can't expect them to go. It's so hard to make the Final Four. It's just so hard.
You have to get hot on the right time, and that's
Right.
kind of what's tricky. I guess, Jason, your final thought. Thanks for joining us this late night, and you're always welcome on Two Countries to America's All Sports.
I appreciate that, guys. My Tennessee prediction, I think we make it to the second weekend. I do. Louisville prediction, I think we make it at least 1 week without a hire, and then everybody goes crazy when it's not Jay Wright. So with that said, thanks, y'all. I will see you guys, I don't know, next time I decide to crash the podcast. Thanks for not hating me, as always. Talk to y'all later.
Absolutely. As always, Jason, thank you so much for joining us. But kind of to go back to what I was on, everyone says Rick Barnes sucks because he can't make the Final Four. But like, I feel like there has to be a lot of nuance to that. Like we've just ran into some really hot teams over the years in the tournament. We've ran into Loyola Chicago when they made the Final Four. We ran into Florida Atlantic last year when they made the Final Four. We ran into a really good Purdue team in 2019. Like it's hard. It's hard to win in the NCAA tournament. And no matter what path we get, it's going to be difficult. But I really hope having a guy like Dalton Connect, when we face a team that can't miss a free, maybe Dalton Connect will be that guy to get some of those frees back.
Oh yeah, definitely he's gonna be the guy who leads the team, and definitely he's gonna be guy everybody, all the teams that he faces gonna guard. So
absolutely. Yeah. So I guess for this week, how far do you expect Tennessee to make it in the SEC championship? I think we go to Saturday and lose to Auburn.
I say I'll go semifinals, lose to South Carolina.
I could see that as well. I think South Carolina honestly could lose to Arkansas tomorrow. Because I feel like one of those first four teams that goes on a little bit of a run, and Arkansas still has a ton of talent on that team that just hasn't gelled this year. So I could totally see that. But it'll be Arkansas, South Carolina is a sneaky good game tomorrow in the league conference tournament. But in any case, this time next week, we're going to have actual brackets so we can actually start breaking down the path for the Volunteers. I just want to go over to the women's side real quick because the Lady Vols, man, they had a wild SEC tournament. They made it to the semifinals against South Carolina. They got down behind by a ton early, but they rallied all the way to take the lead until they left a player for South Carolina wide open, and she hits the shot to win the game.
And where's she from? Where's she from?
Tennessee.
No, the player who hit the buzzer beater.
From Knoxville, right?
Brazil, Camila Cardozo.
Oh, yeah.
Camila Cardozo. Yeah, so I was mixed emotions because I was definitely happy to see a Brazilian player shine like that in the spotlight with such a blue blood program in women's basketball like South Carolina. And she can probably lead the resurgency of Brazilian women's basketball that were so good in the 90s with Paula, Hortensia, and Jeanette. At the same time, I was sad that she had to shine against the Lady Vols that I care so much. So I'm happy for Camila, but sad for the Lady Vols.
I'll say this, though. Even though, yes, that's a heartbreaking way to lose the game, the fact they were even in that game is impressive to me. And right now, Tennessee, as the Lady Vols, are projected to be a 7 seed right now in the NCAA tournament. And honestly, this feels like a team that could make a run. Like they're playing a lot better than they were at the beginning of this year. And they've struggled to beat the very top teams, but they've had free matches against undefeated South Carolina, and they took them to the wire every single time. Kelly has these girls actually playing pretty well right now. And, I'm not saying they're going to win this all, obviously, but, right now, they're projected to be a 7 seed. If they won their first round match against 10 seed Maryland, they would be playing a 2 seed Texas. They could totally pull off that upset and then go to the Sweet 16 and play like an NC State or West Virginia. They could totally beat them. They could go on a bit of a run. And you remember Hollywood have some of those runs, right? With it, the Lady Vols would be like a 6 or a 7 seed, but she would take them to the Elite 8. She had a couple of runs like that. The Kelly could have a run here similar, especially if Rakea Jackson is on point during this tournament.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Tennessee, the Lady Vols definitely knows how to be in this kind of tournament. They never miss the tournament. So
Right, and we're not going to miss it this year. So, and that we were seriously a month or two ago talking about they're going to miss the tournament, and they're going to have to fire Kelly.
So they know how to handle the pressure. Of course, they're gonna have some tough challenges like the Longhorns if they make it to the next round, but I feel like they have nothing to lose on this tournament.
Absolutely, and also we quickly want to shout out the hometown Chattanooga Lady Mocs. They won their 20th SoCon championship. They're back to back. Right now, they're projected to be a 14 seed in the NCAA tournament, so maybe they can pull off an upset. Of course, remember last year we said we would go do an emergency live if they pulled off the upset over Virginia Tech. So, hey, let's try it again. If the Lady Mocs pull off the upset, emergency live for a Lady Mocs upset. Unfortunately for the men Mocs, they blew a 20-point lead to ETSU in the SoCon semifinals. Just stupid basketball. Like the ETSU pressed them, and Chattanooga could not handle the pressure at all. Just completely went brain dead on the men's side. Samford ended up winning the SoCon.
And just to wrap up women's basketball, so then I don't know if you want to talk about what happened at the end of the
I think before we get to that, I do want to shout the Nebraska-Iowa Big Ten Championship.
South Carolina game.
Yeah, you're kind of breaking up, Gus. Yeah. As you mentioned, obviously, South Carolina and LSU got in a fight at the end of the game. And, it's just crazy how toxic the South Carolina LSU rivalry has become.
Oh, yeah, so much. And I think the LSU coach, Ken Moley, kind of instigates that, saying that she wanted another player to be hit, especially the shuffle that she had, and she even say that sexist media coverage and say it's out of control. So she's blaming the media covering it, not the way she handles that kind of issue.
Oh, absolutely. And Kim Mulkey, let's be real. She is down and dirty. Like, I remember, when she got hired at LSU, her first introduction to the podium is, "I'm taking this damn mask off." And that set the tone. I don't know if you remember that, but Kim Mulkey's always been kind of down in the floor. Because remember, she played at Louisiana Tech. She was a basketball player. She's a real one. Now, I'm not particularly a fan of her. I think a lot of former.
But she get results.
Oh yeah, she's obviously the defending national champions. But a coach like Don Staley is not going to I appreciate that. And I can only imagine if Kim Mulkey tried to pull that on prime Pat Summitt.
Yeah.
Could you imagine how Pat Summitt would have tried to handle that?
Yeah, that's true. She'll be more. She have a little more class.
Absolutely. So,
but what's funny to see that Camila Cardoso definitely has the kind of Brazilian instigating side. She definitely would not run from brawl like that.
Absolutely. I think it just goes to show women's basketball legitimately is getting some juice to it. It has gotten so much more juice over the past few years. There's legitimate rivalries that have been created. Let's look at Iowa. That Nebraska-Iowa Big Ten Championship game was incredible. Went to overtime. Of course, Caitlin Clark, as always, was incredible. There's been a lot of discourse about her this year. There's a lot of interesting storylines. USC heading into this tournament with Juju Watkins, who shoots 50 shots a game and scores 50 points. It's going to be a fun NCAA women's tournament. It may end up being more fun than the men's, because I would say last year I thought the women's tournament was better. And we had a much better women's Final Four than men's Final Four. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But the story there are many more storylines. I feel like heading into the women's tournament than there are the men's tournament, especially with like
sure.
Caitlin Clark's last run. Of course, South Carolina trying to avenge LSU. LSU trying to go back to back. Obviously, they had to fight. Yeah, because over on the men's side, is what like Purdue, I guess, coming back from 16-1. Of course, Tennessee's never made the Final Four. Yeah. But I guess one thing before we wrap up basketball talk, we didn't really talk about the Kentucky-Tennessee game. I just want to say, as frustrating as it was to see Santiago and Josiah Jordan-James in that game, really, you do have to give credit to Kentucky. Kentucky is playing a lot better right now. In fact, they're playing defense well enough now that they are a legitimate national title contender because their offense is great with Reed Shepherd and Rob Dillingham. I mean, those boys can shoot. And if they commit to playing defense at least an acceptable level, Kentucky can beat anybody. Now, Kentucky can lose to anybody, but they can beat anybody. And we'll just have to see if Coach Cal can keep them focused throughout the SEC and NCAA tournaments. Because Kentucky, to me, is a dark horse national title contender at this moment.
Yeah, that's true. There's nothing to be worried about the last game of the regular season. As I mentioned, probably some players took the foot out of the gas, which, is understandable after you accomplish what Tennessee did, which was winning the regular season SEC championship. And let's see what they're going to do tomorrow against the winner of or Friday, better, again the winner of LSU Mississippi State.
Yeah. One last topic I wanted to bring up. For the minor conferences, for the mid-minor conferences, are these conference tournaments good for them? Like, I know there's a lot of excitement in these conference tournaments for minor conferences, but a lot of their regular season champions, like Eastern Washington, Appalachian State, Indiana State, have lost and now are facing not being in the tournament. I feel like for these minor teams like a Chattanooga, like I know for a fact I don't really pay attention to the mocks until the tournament because I know their season doesn't really matter until they go to Asheville. It's not like the Vols because I know for the mocks they have to win their tournament or else they're not going to the NCAA tournament. Like I don't think the way that the auto bids work for minor conferences is good for their leagues.
Yeah, and but it's the kind of the system that's how it works, and I feel like it's I don't think it's going to be changed, and that's how it is.
Absolutely. So in any case, we'll have full brackets reacting. Of course, we will pick them like we have done in the past year on Two Countries, Two Americas, all sports. Just other shouts out, just to wrap up other college sports real quick. Baseball swept Illinois. They keep on rolling. Only one loss so far this year. We're getting close to SEC play here very, very soon. And spring practice begins on Monday for the Volunteers. Some teams have actually begun spring practice, like Alabama. Just real quick, Gus, what is the one thing you're looking for Vols football spring practice this year?
For Nico to continue his development. We see we saw his opening presentation in January in Orlando. So I think what I want is for more reps and more development out of him.
Absolutely. For me, I want to see who we have in the secondary. I want to see what depth we have there because we've had to replace a lot in that particular area. So secondary is an area I'm going to be watching significantly throughout the spring practice. But it's time to get to our big topic. There's really a yin and a yang today. We had college basketball with March Madness ongoing, but there's another type of March Madness ongoing in football, but it's the NFL. The NFL, it just goes to show how much football runs American sports because NFL free agency is dominating the sports conversation, and it's just going crazy. I mean, Gus, I have never seen an NFL free agency like this before.
But I think it shows how some franchises are going all in because they don't want to be in the you don't want to be in the kind of in the middle. You don't want to be caught up in the where you are tanking, but also you don't want to be kind of mediocre. So there's a lot of team going forward. I think the team who made the biggest moves in the offseason in this free agency definitely is the Commanders. I think it shows how the new ownership wants results right away. And definitely the NFL. What scares me the most is how the NFC East teams made moves outside of one team that the fan base definitely wants to see moves and are tired of ineptitude.
Absolutely. So, Gus, there's so many moves. Where do you want to start? I guess let's start with Washington since you brought them up. To me, the blockbuster signing for them is Austin Eckler. I didn't even realize Austin Eckler was even entertaining leaving Los Angeles. I mean, he's been a stud there for the Chargers for years. Led the NFL in touchdowns 2 years ago. Had a bit of a regression this year, but to the Commanders. I mean, wow, this one caught me so far off guard.
But it shows how Dan Quinn and this new ownership want to get results, and they are going all in on the free agency market. And to bring up the point, like, it also shows how everybody a couple of months ago were talking about how running backs were devalued, how nobody cares about running backs anymore, how running backs, is not as valuable as wide receivers and quarterbacks. But this free agency class shows how running backs are still a really good asset to have and how teams are making the moves. Of course, it contributes to it that this draft class of running backs is not as good as it was a couple of years ago. But at the same time, teams made the move because you need to have at least a okay to a good running game to at least be competitive.
Yeah, I mean, arguably the best running back in this draft class is Jalen Wright. Now, I love Jalen Wright as a ball, but I have to acknowledge he's not like an elite level draft prospect. So I think a lot of these teams are going on some of these older prospects. So, like, staying in the NFC East, we got Saquon Barkley, probably the top free agent. Well, I wouldn't say the top free agent running back. There's another guy I would put above him. Probably your second highest free agent running back here. Leaving New York to go to cross-divisional Philadelphia, which is an interesting time because Philadelphia is going to be kind of rebuilding their offensive line after losing Joseph and Kelsey. I think this is good for Saquon in terms of he will not have to carry so much of the load because he will finally be a financial quarterback in Jalen Hurts. They have other pieces on that Eagles roster. Nick Sirianni does like to rotate them in and out. So he should get a lot less volume of the carries, and that should keep him fresher. I mean, look at what DeAndre Swift did last year with the Eagles.
Yeah, definitely. It was a surprising move for the team that landed him, but I wasn't surprised that he left New York. There was definitely some tension on his tenure. I think Saquon Barkley never kind of adjusted to the Giants organization, but go to a divisional rival, that surprised me.
Yeah, but I'm just glad he's on a team that's actually serious about winning for once, because New York right now does not appear serious at all. I mean,
Yeah.
Seriously telling me you're going to stick with Daniel Jones for now? I mean, you're not even going to try to get a guy like Justin Fields, who's apparently no one wants? I mean, it isn't that crazy. Like, we were talking all so far this season, Justin Fields is probably your biggest quarterback prospect, but Atlanta goes and gets Kirk Cousins. I'm trying to think what other team was. I'm blanking right now.
The what?
I'm trying to think of other quarterbacks. So obviously Kirk Cousins, he went to Atlanta. We got Jacoby Brissett going to New England. Jameis Winston backing up Deshaun Watson in Cleveland. No one wants Justin Fields.
Russell Wilson.
Oh yeah, Russell Wilson. There you go. To Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh and Atlanta to me were the top two destinations for Justin Fields.
I think Justin Fields is going to be and is ended up going to be a backup quarterback like Jacoby Brissett that you just mentioned, like James Winston, like Marcus Mariota, and so many others. I really feel that. But at the same time, don't you think that if the Bears wanted to trade him, they were already done it? So what think's gonna happen? They're gonna draft a quarterback, and Fields gonna be the starter. And if he doesn't perform well, they're gonna start like let's say Caleb Williams.
Yeah, if you're Chicago, though, if you're investing the draft capital into a quarterback at the number one position, you expect that number one quarterback to be your starter. It's not like, Justin Fields is like 35. Like, if Justin Fields works out, like, let's say he goes out there this year and it's just incredible, then you have a number one quarterback just sitting on the bench. So I think if you keep Justin Fields in your Chicago, you either have to draft Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr. at number one overall. Give that man a true wide receiver superstar. I think either one of those running backs are both going to be studs in this league. Or you trade away that number one pick for more picks and potentially other assets. I don't think you can. Chicago would be beyond idiotic to have enter this season with both Justin Fields and like Caleb Williams. I mean, do you think we've seen Caleb Williams be a bit of a diva this offseason, right? Like not going to weigh in, not going to take a medical report, not going to do like the press conference at the combine. Do you think Caleb Williams being managed by his overbearing father is going to stand being the backup in Chicago to Justin Fields?
He might have to suck it up and do it like Fields. But for me, like Caleb Williams, it's good to be a backup in your freshman year because you have time to develop, patience to develop. You don't want to be a freshman and start in the functional organization. Just ask Justin Fields.
Right, or Bryce Young last year.
Yeah.
But then again, CJ Stroud was incredible last year as a rookie. So, but then again, the Texans have kind of figured things out, I feel like, in terms of organization. So, I mean, there's been some fantastic rookies in this league. I mean, so it's just going to be crazy how that ends up. I think, honestly, either he stays in Chicago, which is the most likely outcome to me right now for Justin Fields, or he maybe goes to Vegas because Vegas doesn't really have a quarterback figured out.
Yeah. We'll see
Jimmy
what's
G definitely is not the answer.
Let's see what's going to be the moves down in the city of Chicago. But I want to talk about
Speaking
this
of Chicago real quick, DePaul is up by 2 with 20 seconds left over at Villanova. So Villanova's season is basically on the brink right now. And yeah, so that would be a huge loss for Villanova. But anyway, you're about to bring up Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I believe was a $1 million deal. He signed with the Steelers. I think the Steelers made the right move, waiting for the shoe to drop and the Broncos to release him to get him with a way cheaper than probably if you trade him and get his absurd contract. And for Russell Wilson, is the last shot, I think, in the NFL in a stable but defensive oriented franchise. And I think the big difference between him, Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh compared to Denver is there is no pressure on him. He's going in a way less pressure.
Yeah, I guess the question is, who are they starting? Are they going to continue to try to develop Kenny Pickett into a starter, or now you bring in Russell Wilson? I mean, Russell Wilson has a Super Bowl ring. Like, you have to start him.
No, yeah, I'll say, like, you don't bring Russell Wilson to keep trying to make like Kenny Pickett is. Let's be honest. It was a really good story that the Steelers organization and Mike Tomlin wanted to work because he went to University of Pittsburgh. He was a Pittsburgh guy, and if it worked, it would be a great story. But the NFL is not about great story. It's about producing on the field, and he definitely is not. Like, he was benched by by Rudolph. So definitely Russell Wilson is going to be starter on week 1 for the Steelers.
Yeah, and I guess the question is for Denver, what do they do at quarterback? I mean, I think they're going to have to draft a rookie. And they have, I think, picked like 9. Now, would they try to trade with like the Bears to get the number 1 pick? Maybe get Caleb Williams out there. Maybe they can trade up and get like a Jaden Daniels or a Drake May. Because I think them, New England, Vegas are teams that desperately are going to have to either trade for Justin Fields or draft a quarterback.
I think probably New England kind of needs a quarterback more because at least Jimmy G has, and it's so funny how those franchises are kind of stuck with the backups from Tom Brady. And I guess you have a crazy update.
Yeah, so Villanova hit a game-winning 3. So Villanova by a point saves their season.
I guess they survived the night.
Yeah, and with 5 minutes left, Missouri's at 55-52 to try to get their first conference win of the season against Georgia. Man, that was brutal.
But just to wrap up the kind of Steelers discussion, we've seen Russell Wilson thrive in a defensive-oriented franchise. When he won the Super Bowl with the Seahawks back in 2013, the team was known for the Legion of Boom. That was a good defense, so it might work.
I mean, it really might. And I think, when you look at Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, like that's a good running backs. They got George Pickens, who I think is a really good receiver. I mean, I think the Steelers are going to be pretty decent, I feel like. And as we know, Mike Tomlin never goes below 500. So,
yeah.
In any case, speaking of the NFC North, it pains me to say that it is official. The King, Derrick Henry, is no longer in Nashville. I just want to say on that brief note, thank you for everything that you did for the Titans organization. I wish that we could have done better by him for everything that he did do for us. And obviously, I'll never forget the 2019 playoff run. I'll never forget his electric 2020 season, his 21 season, all the stiff arms. You may have gone to University of Alabama, but you're one of my all-time favorite players. And I hope he kills it in Baltimore.
Yeah, I'll never forget. I had a chance to do a one-on-one interview with him when he was when he was a rookie. So I'll never forget that moment and how nice he was to me and the memories he made for all the Tennessee Titans fans throughout Nashville and the entire state of Tennessee. And I'll never forget that 99-yard rushing touchdown he did against Jacksonville. How he dominated for a while the AFC South, but it was the right move, Nick. It was the right move.
Oh, it was. It was time. I think some of my favorite moments are that was the moment where I realized he was special. That moment, of course, what he did against the Patriots and the Ravens, of course, in 2019. Those games he had against. Remember that we had to go to Houston in 2 consecutive years to win the AFC South, and he was electric in both games. Just man, that one stiff arm he had against Josh Norman and the Bills. I mean, just so many great memories. But it's time. And because the Titans are going in a new direction offensively, and Derrick Henry deserves to be on a team that's in the championship con. And obviously, Baltimore didn't have enough this year to overcome Kansas City. So what else do they really need? I mean, honestly, like one of their big deficiencies, if we're being very honest, their running back position was not very good. I mean, J.K. Dobbins cannot stay healthy to save his life. And Lamar Jackson cannot be their leading rusher. He's a quarterback. Like, you need a running back. And who else better than Derrick Henry? I shudder thinking about defenses trying to tackle Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in the same backfield. That's going to be a bulldozer of a backfield. And this might be what is like when they play Kansas City again. Maybe this is what they need to get over the top.
Yeah. And I think the way the contract was restructured, was $9 million guaranteed in the first year, and then the rest is not. So they put in a 2-year deal that feels like a 1-year deal.
Yeah, and I think that's wise because as a running back, you never know how long the shelf life is. And I think for Derrick Henry, this is I want to go win a ring decision for him. And obviously for Tennessee, we were going to be nowhere close to that. Plus, I just don't think the play style with Brian Callahan was going to suit Derrick Henry. But this will. And it won't be all on his shoulders because Lamar Jackson obviously can do a lot both on the ground and through the air. You got Zay Flowers on that team, who was a great rookie receiver. Baltimore is going to be a team to beat. And honestly, they're probably KC's biggest threat next season. Because someone has to dethrone the Chiefs. And the Ravens are probably in as better of a position than anyone else to do that.
Oh, yeah. And definitely John Harbaugh needed that reinforcement on the running game.
Absolutely. Speaking of Tennessee, though, we do have a new running back. A running back that I have really been a fan of up until this past year, Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard was an amazing running back, too, behind Ezekiel Elliott. He was a terrible running back run this past year. It did not get it going. But I do have to wonder how much of this was play calling at Dallas. I feel like that Dallas is just such a pass-heavy team that Pollard never was able to get going. So hopefully bringing in Pollard. He's coming out on a 3-year, $24 million contract. Go ahead.
But also, for the other side, it shows how Dallas is losing talent and not replacing, like I just mentioned when we start talking about the NFL.
Oh, yeah. Right now, their top running back right now is Rico Dowdle. Rico Dowdle had some good moments, but I don't think he's a good enough running back to get you over the top. But personally, I was not really expecting us to go get another running back. I was okay with having Tajay Spears as RB1. Because Spears, I think, is quite electrifying. I think, honestly, with this pass-happy offense we're going to have, as evidenced by a signing we had today, because I think with Will Levis's arm, we're going to try to spread the ball out a lot more, like what you see out in Cincinnati. Now, it will remain to be seen, can Will Levis effectively run an offense like that? We don't know yet. There's some indications that he cannot. There's some that he can. It just depends on how well he takes the coaching that he's going to receive this offseason. But obviously, he'll have 2 decently talented running backs behind him. And then he'll now have at least 2 NFL-capable receivers. He now has Calvin Ridley. We signed a 4-year, $92 million, which feels like an insane overpay to me. This dude's about to be 30 years old. And, of course, obviously, Calvin Ridley has a checkered past, got suspended for an entire year because of gambling. Now, thankfully, we live in a state where it is legal to gamble here in Tennessee, but still you can't gamble as an NFL player. But I don't know. I know last year was the second best statistical season with over 1,000 yards receiving, 8 touchdowns. He's had double-digit touchdowns once in his career. For us, it's clearly a major upgrade. But as I've seen some people point out, right now, the Titans' 2 best receivers, D-Hop is 33, Calvin Ridley is 30, and we have a second-year quarterback. It's kind of the opposite of Cincinnati, where Joe Burrow is getting to grow up with his receivers like Jamar Chase. Will Levis has veteran receivers, which in the short term is good, but in the long term means that if Will Levis ends up being the guy, we're going to have to replace that whole generation of receivers with younger pieces, which means a guy like Treylon Burks desperately needs to develop this year and show that he's not a total bust. Because, we need a young receiver.
Yeah, that's I think the way to do it. Otherwise, you're gonna get screwed.
Absolutely, and I think this 100% confirms we're going to take either Joe Alt or Alu Fashnu with our first pick at 7. We're going to 100% go offensive line since we just signed a receiver. I'm still impartial to Romeo Dunze, but you got to go left tackle. You got to address that moving forward. So Speaking on the other side, the other local team here in our market here in Chattanooga, the Atlanta Falcons, they have a quarterback. They decided Desmond Ridder wasn't good enough, which is the correct call in their decision. And they bring in probably the most Atlanta Falcon-y quarterback of all time in Kirk Cousins. an above-average quarterback who's going to put up a lot of stats. But you know what Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons have in common? They don't win in the postseason. And it does not be a more perfect fit.
It was like it didn't this feel right, average with some moment, franchise with a quarterback that average with some good moments. And I think for Atlanta, it brings up stability and kind of more experienced quarterback because didn't work with Desmond Riddick. And I feel like, it's probably what the new head coach wanted to do.
Yeah, and it should activate Kyle Pitts, hopefully. Drake London is a really talented receiver. Of course, Bijan Robinson, even though that pick was still not a very good pick last year, to spend that high of a draft pick on Bijan Robinson, I mean, he's still a very talented running back. So Atlanta, I think, is going to have a really good chance to win NFC South. I think it'll be them and Tampa. Tampa re-signed Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans. That should be a pretty entertaining race, I think, next year for the NFC South.
Yeah,
But,
and I feel like
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
In any case, I'm just gonna, I guess, speed run some of these other ones. So I don't know what else you're gonna say on Atlanta.
No, just to finish up, Atlanta, I feel can compete for division. I don't think because if you think about it, all the top teams in the NFC South have good to average quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield, now Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, and I mean Bryce Young. Let's see how he is in year 2. But the other threes are kind of quarterbacks that had good moments and had some peaks, but at the same time, it never accomplished what we expected.
Oh, for sure, and that's just the story of the Atlanta Falcons. Some interesting running back shuffling in Green Bay. They let Aaron Jones go to Minnesota, which now for Minnesota, what do they do at quarterback? I mean, I think they're going to have to draft a quarterback because right now their best option is Jaron Hall. I mean, I know they were thinking about maybe signing Sam Darnold. Maybe they will also consider Justin Fields. Maybe. But Minnesota, I think, is blowing it up. They're going to a rebuild. Because there's actually rumors they may trade away Justin Jefferson. Which would be insane, in my opinion, to do that. Because that feels like a Titans A.J. Brown move.
Yeah, that's true. It kind of feels this way.
Yeah. But Josh Jacobs to Green Bay, I think, is an excellent signing for the Packers. I think he's an upgrade over Aaron Jones. And him and Jordan Love could do some serious damage in the NFC North. I think Green Bay could take it to Detroit next year to try to regain control of the NFC North. I think that's going to be a great race between those two teams. Minnesota, it's just going to be an afterthought next year. I don't think they're going to be competitive for the NFC North. Joe Mixon to Houston, I think it's a really underrated signing. Getting C.J. Stroud, some running back stability behind him, a veteran, I think is a really good thing. As C.J. Stroud continues his development, I think Houston and Jacksonville, as of this moment, are the best built teams in the AFC South to compete for that title. Indy and Tennessee still have some things they need to address this offseason. Of course, Jacoby Brissett going to New England just feels like a stopgap. New England's going to draft a quarterback. Right now, their quarterbacks are Jacoby Brissett and Bailey Zappi after they traded away Mac Jones to Jacksonville, which, by the way, what a downfall for Mac Jones. So he's now been relegated to the backup in Jacksonville. So,
and it's funny, he's back up to a guy that he played against in college.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just humiliating, but at least he's getting paid for it. New England, Jacoby Brissett and Bailey Zappi as your quarterbacks. They're going to draft a quarterback. Jane Daniels, honestly, it feels like could be the guy there. Where's your Andre Swift to Chicago? Good season in Philly last year. We'll be supporting either Justin Fields or Caleb Williams, I guess. Whoever ends up being the guy in Chicago. Jameis Winston to Cleveland's interesting because now you've got him and Deshaun Watson in the same locker room. Which, considering both of their histories. Yeah, and they have Jerry Jeudy in there as well, who kind of had some character issues of his own. So the Cleveland Browns, no shortage of drama.
Yeah.
But in any case, give me where do you think to finish off NFL discussion for now? Where do you think Justin Fields is going to play next year?
Chicago Bears.
I would agree. I think he's going to stay in Chicago. One more NFL note that's not necessarily on the field, but could have an impact on the season. So there is a third-party presidential candidate. Of course, obviously Joe Biden and Donald Trump are going to be the main two electoral candidates once again in the 2020 rematch. But there is a third candidate trying to go independent, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And he has named a couple of potential running mates, and among them is Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers hasn't even denied this. And in theory, the RFK apparently announced today that he has picked a running mate, and he's going to announce it here in the next 2 weeks. And in case you are not from the U.S., maybe you're not familiar with U.S. politics, the running mate, if a presidential candidate wins, your running mate becomes the vice president. Aaron Rodgers, in theory, could be a running mate this fall. And if he does, will he try to still play football while doing so?
It's kind of like a move that kind of seeing it coming the way he been expressing about politics and some controversial issues like COVID for the past 3 years. But I think it then would be a nail in the coffin for his football career that it shows he's not 100% in football.
Yeah, and if you're the Jets, like if he becomes the vice president, what do you do? If you're the Jets GM right now, how do you prepare for Aaron Rodgers saying deuces and going into politics?
I mean, the Jets are kind of like they are definitely not easy to handle this situation. I feel like when they got Aaron Rodgers, of course, they wanted to upgrade the quarterback position because, Zach Wilson is not the answer. But what a treat!
Yeah, it's going to be. We should have some pretty good content come from this. If Aaron Rodgers ends up being the vice president, I mean, that would be nuts. Could you imagine? He wins the Super Bowl and then invites himself to the White House.
Oh my God, that would have been funny.
Yeah, that would be quite hysterical. I would imagine what if he plays right and still runs as vice president? Imagine he's playing on Monday Night Football one night, then he goes and flies out and debates Kamala Harris and whoever Trump selects as his roommate. And then imagine if he wins, and then he has to stop playing football mid-season to get ready to be vice president. Imagine if he still tries to play football. Let's say RFK got into office and something happens to RFK, like it's happened to previous Kennedys, and then Aaron Rodgers has to be president, and he's still playing football.
I mean, you would have think of that in kind of the closest thing that happened was in Libya, where George Weah, a legendary soccer player, became the president. So it was kind of like that.
Right. I mean, Liberia is such a small country, though. I mean, we're talking about the president of the United States is one of the most powerful positions in the entire world. I don't know. I don't really think Aaron Rodgers is probably qualified really for that. I mean, I don't know really what it takes or what it really means to be qualified, considering what politics has turned into. But in any case, that's going to be some interesting. I very seriously doubt Aaron Rodgers is going to do this, but at the very least, he's going to milk the limelight because Aaron Rodgers can never say no to a good controversy. But in any case, just some quick NASCAR. Christopher Bell won at Phoenix. Third different winner so far, or fourth different winner around in 4 races. Not the best race. Phoenix, I wish, would get replay for the championship. It's just a boring track, not a lot of passing. At least this week, they're going to Bristol here in East Tennessee. And Bristol is not dirt for the spring where they're going back to the concrete. So, going to be a very interesting race. I'm tempted to go myself, but I don't know if I'm going to. Some off-the-track news. NBC is changing commentators. They're bringing in Lee Diffie to be the new commentator for NBC instead of Rick Allen this year in Cup Series. And this is on top of Dale Jr. sitting out this year so he can go commentate for Amazon and TNT next year when they start their new NASCAR contract. So some interesting changes on the TV side of things for NASCAR. But to kind of begin our transition into Brazil, we have some American soccer to talk about. First and foremost, we have Champions League, round of 16 CONCACAF. National SC things did not go well for them tonight against the fighting Lionel Messi's of Inter Miami.
Yeah, it's hard to beat the duo, Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez. They scored, and Robert Taylor did as well. Nashville scored at the end of the game, 3-1. What a run! Great run, first time in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Now Inter Miami moves on to the quarterfinals, waiting for their opponent. But another England team eliminated. Orlando City lost 4-2 to Tigres from Mexico. But the humiliating elimination was Philadelphia, losing 6-0 to Pachuca. So again, it shows how Mexican teams are a little bit a step above American teams. And so now we have Columbus and Tigres in quarterfinals, Pachuca in Herediano, the team from Costa Rica, and Inter Miami waits their opponent, which is going to be find out tomorrow because you still have New England facing Alajuelense, and Cincinnati faces Monterrey. But New England won 4-0 their first leg, and Cincinnati won 1-0 their first leg.
Absolutely. But this definitely feels like Miami's tournament to lose.
Yeah, Miami's definitely getting the favor. If Inter Miami won the next, let's say, 3 games, Lionel Messi is going to be played for another FIFA Club World Cup like the Messi won with Barcelona. So he can be probably, I wouldn't say, I don't know if that ever happened. Like a player won the FIFA Club World Cup for 2 different teams from 2 different continents. I mean, Ronaldinho almost did that with Atlético Mineiro. He won the Champions League. I know he won Champions League, but he lost the FIFA Club World Cup in 2006. So, and we'll see what's gonna be ahead.
Oh, for sure. And speaking of what's coming up ahead, of course, the USMT this season has the CONCACAF Nations League starting here next week. They face Jamaica, and they announced the roster for that. And the roster overall is pretty solid. And I think the thing that really strikes me is how the majority of this roster is not MLS, which is a good sign that the talent in America is getting a lot better.
Yeah, that's true. Definitely this generation lead by Christian Pulisic, and I'm eager how this team's gonna develop for the Copa America in the summer.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch like Tim Way to see how he has developed. Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, Sergio Dest are all guys that have huge roles, I think, and continue to make the team better. Of course, Matt Turner, I thought, has been a great goalie for us. So I'm very interested to see what the USMT is able to do as they continue to get ready for that pivotal 2026 World Cup. But let's move on down to Brazil, because I know things have been crazy down there as well, in your world especially.
Oh, yeah, Rio Branco. Yeah, Rio Branco lost to our bigger rival, União Barbarense in a goal. I don't know if you saw it or not, but it was one of the most bizarre goals I've ever seen. The goalkeeper, which a guy that I really like, Eder, he's been really like a really close friend down in the organization, made a huge blender, and the worst player of União Barbarense scored a goal. That's what infuriated me. And they won 2-1, and they chanted our client came back, which is kind of saying like, hey, it's like at Florida Saint Tennessee, our client came back. It's saying o freguês voltou. It's like we have a chant for when you have a rivalry, but it's kind of the one side wins more than the other. But there was a huge fight after the game, and both teams, uh, both teams, goalkeepers and goalkeepers reserve, were red carded after the game, and there might be some punishments. They still happen, but Rio Branco, uh, after hard week, firing the coach, firing the assistant coach, you know, having to play their third string goalkeeper from the academy, but they went to Taquaritinga and won 2-1 after being down 1-0. And they are in sixth place, and I believe they're definitely going to qualify, hopefully on the top four, so they can play their second leg in the quarterfinals at home and have the advantage of tying, like say, both games and get in. But definitely was a crazy week here in
Yeah.
America, especially in the Rio Branco organization.
I'll say I was showing a lot of my coworkers that finish, and they just are in awe of how insane Brazilian soccer is. Like,
Yeah.
And as they were asking me, like, does every game end in a brawl?
No.
And like,
No. You have to explain it to them that that's a rivalry game. That's Tennessee, Florida. That's Yankees and Red Sox. That's
because I remember there's been 2 Rio Bronco games that have had fights. Because there was the miracle game last year against, was it Pinapolice, I think, right?
Pinapolice. We had a fight, and then Rio Branco scored.
Yeah, which is, in my money, like the fact that they scored, there's a brawl, and then, like, honestly, one of these days, before it gets banned in the U.S., I need to make like a TikTok on it and introduce that finish to the American masses, because, like, I could narrate it, really build it up, because, that's the best finish that the vast majority of the world has never seen.
Yeah, I'll never forget that finish. I'll never forget. I still give me goosebumps when I remember about that game, and and definitely this team is better than last year's team. But for our rivals, União Barbarense, they were happy on Wednesday, but then on Saturday they lost 7-0 on the road against Grêmio São Carlense, and it could have been more. It's just Grêmio São Carlense took the foot out of the gas and kind of slowed down at the end of the game. But it could have been 8, 9, 10, and fan groups of União Barbarense, which was like glorifying the coach and the team. Now we're like one of the coach fire, saying it was humiliating. But deep down, even the radio stations from Santa Barbara do Oeste that kind of they are partial. They want União Barbarense to be good. They are honest and say we are happy that União Barbarense won against Rio Branco, but they know Rio Branco play way better. Rio Branco, even though they were down 10 men, they were down a man in the second half, deserved to win. They had the better chances, but soccer is soccer.
Right.
When the goalkeeper makes a mistake, and it ended up scoring, that's soccer.
And I will say, I think Vladimir Ismail did not deserve to be fired. Just from an outsider perspective, I think that was a rash decision that will harm Rio Branco in the long term. I know they all won on Saturday, but he came in when y'all were in crisis last year, about to get demoted to the 5th division. And he came in and turned your team around, saved it, and got you all into the quarterfinals, almost as semis if y'all could have hit a penalty kick. And now you're going to fire him because your goalkeeper dropped a ball in the most bizarre finish to a game in a rivalry game. Yeah, I'm sorry. I understand it works differently there with coaches. I think that's a mistake.
I can see that, but that's the kind of game that I feel like, unfortunately, it's a championship within the championship. If the game ended up in a tie, he would have still have his job. And there were some question marks about his work. The fans were super thrilled about it. There were a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of like games that the team played good in the first half, bad in the second. Team played good in the bad in the first half, played good in the second. So, and when you have a traumatic game like that, as I heard from one Rio Branco front office member, changes need to be made. And in Brazil, when you need to make a change in your soccer department, the coach goes first. And I hope he has a good rest of his career. I still think he's a very competent head coach. He's one of the most hardworking people I've ever seen, person I've ever seen. Also, his assistant, also really good and competent coach. Both are going to bounce back and find other jobs, but for now, Rio Branco hired, made the interim head coach permanent and hire. I'd say it's kind of like is a they hire somebody in between a GM and a coach. I don't know how to kind of qualify that.
Hmm. Definitely, I mean, like a player personnel, basically, or something like that.
Uh,
But
it's
like,
we call like a soccer coordinator. Like he kind of coordinates the it kind of like it would be like uh a coaching staff manager. I'll say coaching staff manager.
interesting. Yeah. Well, we'll see how it works out in the long run. I certainly didn't agree with it when I heard the news. As a distant follower who doesn't completely understand everything, um, but they are 1-0 since it happened, so maybe they are right and I am wrong on
Yeah,
this.
and Rio
But
Branco has two home games in Saturday against Barretos and Wednesday against Kings Owen. If Rio Branco
yeah,
wins both of those
and,
games,
and I think too, honestly, like it's just my American perspective on that because it's like if we fired Josh Heupel after the South Carolina game in 22 or Florida last year, like all
no,
the good he has done for the Vols, like I just I couldn't.
I compare this to fire Butch Jones after the 2017 Florida game. I think that's the best comparison because like Bud Jones kind of had good moments like Valmir's Hal had with Bronco, but he was never a unanimous. He had some question marks, and when you lose a rivalry game the way Bud Jones lost the 2017 Florida game, and the way Valmir's Hal loses, like you lose the locker room, you lose the confidence of your upper managers.
Yeah, and honestly, I remember wanting him gone after that game. So maybe I do have more in common than I remember. Because I remember
Yeah,
we didn't run the ball at the goal line when we should have, and just all kinds of mess. So
yeah, like that's a perfect comparison. Like all and because like Rio Branco had against Union Barbarese, the Rio Branco played better, but lost at the end because of their own mistakes. That's the same thing that Tennessee happened against Florida in 2017. Or am I wrong?
you are completely correct on that.
Yeah, and just to wrap up, Sao Paulo, the first division, São Paulo State Championship, going to the quarterfinals. Corinthians out. They're going to play tomorrow in the Brazilian Cup. But Palmeiras in. They're going to play against Ponte Preta. But they're not playing their stadium because their beautiful stadium, Allianz Park, is changing their grass because their artificial turf was not working. But there's still no date for the new grass to arrive. São Paulo needed a last minute penalty to get in the quarterfinals. They're going to face Novo Horizontino at home. Santos playing Portuguesa. And then Red Bull Bragantino play Inter Limeira this weekend, the quarterfinals of the São Paulo State Championship first division.
Absolutely. It's a busy time in Brazil. It's a busy time in America. It's March Madness everywhere. And we're going to have a bracket to react to and It's going to be one heck of a March. That's for sure. But we've reached the end of tonight's show. For Gus Tomazeli, I'm Nick Hill. You've listened to the only Brazilian-American sports podcast. 2 countries, 2 Americas, all sports, episode 121 here on March 13th, 2024. Y'all have a good night.